For decades, we searched the stars with a hopeful and profoundly naive gaze, looking for reflections of our own world, for pale blue dots that might harbor the familiar comforts of water, air, and life. We dreamed of cosmic neighbors and tranquil, star-dusted paradises. What we have found so far is a catalog of nightmares. The ongoing discovery of thousands of exoplanets has opened our eyes to a staggering and deeply unsettling truth about the cosmos. The universe is not filled with gentle Earth-like worlds waiting to be discovered. It is a cosmic gallery of horrors, a bestiary of planetary monsters that defy our every notion of what a planet should be. This is a journey into that darkness, a tour of the most violent, the most bizarre, and the most fundamentally terrifying planets known to exist. These are not just worlds that are inhospitable. These are worlds that are actively, relentlessly, and physically hostile. Places where the fundamental laws of physics have conspired to create visions of hell, so complete they make our own solar system's harshest environments, from the frozen deserts of Mars to the crushing acid clouds of Venus, feel like welcoming sanctuaries in comparison. Our tour begins not in the cold, but in the fire. We journey first to the inferno of worlds that orbit their stars in a perilously close embrace. Planets locked in a gravitational death grip, forever showing one face to their sun in an eternal, unblinking, and agonizing stare. On these tidally locked worlds, one hemisphere is a permanent, scorched wasteland, a sea of molten lava where rock itself boils directly into the atmosphere, a place where the sun never sets. The other hemisphere is its perfect opposite, a realm of absolute, cryogenic cold and unending night, a frozen landscape where the sun is never seen. But the true horror often lies in the region between these two impossible extremes, the perpetual twilight zone, where the boiling atmosphere of the day side meets the frozen air of the night side, creating weather patterns of unimaginable violence. Our first destination is a prime exhibit of this celestial torture, a planet designated Coro 7b. When it was first discovered, there was a brief shining moment of excitement in the astronomical community. It was hailed as the first confirmed rocky exoplanet, a super-Earth that might, we dared to hope, be something like our own home. That hope was swiftly and utterly annihilated by the data. Coro 7b is a world of fire and stone, orbiting its star 60 times closer than the Earth orbits our sun. From its surface, that star would not be a distant orb, it would be a sky-filling furnace, appearing 360 times larger than our own sun, a permanent, terrifying god of heat dominating the heavens. The temperature on the perpetually sun-scorched hemisphere of Coro 7b reaches an almost incomprehensible 2600 degrees Celsius, a heat so intense that the very ground itself, the silicate rock that makes up the planet's crust, cannot maintain a solid form. It melts, forming vast, bubbling oceans of liquid rock, glowing with their own infernal light. But even this is not the end of the horror. The heat is so extreme that the surface of this molten lava ocean itself evaporates, turning directly into a vapor of rock that rises to form clouds. Clouds not of water but of stone. As this superheated rock vapor is carried by ferocious winds across the planet toward the eternal darkness of the night side, a horrifying transformation begins. On the night side, the temperatures plummet to a cryogenic minus 235 degrees Celsius. In this profound, unending cold, the rock vapor that has drifted from the day side begins to cool and condense, first forming microscopic particles of minerals like a searing soot. These particles then clump together, growing larger and heavier, forming into what can only be described as stone-cold pebbles. When these pebbles become too heavy for the thin atmosphere to support, they begin to fall. It rains on Corpo 7b, But it is not a rain of water that offers life. It is a perpetual, unrelenting rain of rocks, a constant shower of gravel and stone, falling from a dark sky onto a frozen, lava-scarred landscape. Imagine the sound of it. A constant, hissing clatter of a billion tiny stones striking a desolate world, a sound that has continued uninterrupted for a billion years. To make this vision even more terrifying, many scientists believe Coro 7b was not born this way, but was violently made into the hell it is today. They theorize that this planet is a Chthonian world, the burned-out skeletal core of what was once a mighty gas giant, a majestic planet perhaps the size of Jupiter or Saturn. In this view, the planet formed farther out in its system, but over time it migrated too close to its parent star. The star's intense radiation and ferocious solar wind then began the slow, torturous process of stripping the planet of its thick, gaseous atmosphere, boiling it off into space, layer by layer over millions of years. What we are witnessing now is the naked, exposed core of that once great world, a planetary corpse still being perpetually tormented by the very star that murdered it. The horror of Cort 7b is a specific horror of fire and stone, a world that is being simultaneously melted, vaporized, and pelted by its own substance. But there are other, stranger, and perhaps even more profound forms of terror waiting for us in the cosmos. There are worlds where the horror comes not from the searing, overwhelming presence of a star, but from its complete and total absence. Our journey now takes us from this planetary inferno into a realm of absolute cold, unending night, and a loneliness so profound it defies all human imagination. For the entire span of human history, the night sky has been a canvas for our hopes, our dreams, and our innate desire to find order in a chaotic universe. We connected the distant, glittering points of light into the familiar shapes of heroes and mythical beasts, telling ourselves stories of constancy and purpose. We charted the steady, predictable paths of the planets in our own solar system, seeing in their clockwork orbits a reflection of a divine or mathematical harmony. We looked up into that vast, silent, velvet blackness, and we saw peace. We saw tranquility. We saw a serene and majestic emptiness that invited contemplation and promised a kind of eternal, cosmic stability. This perception, this deep-seated and romantic vision of a peaceful cosmos, has been the bedrock of our relationship with the universe for millennia. But it is a profound and beautiful illusion, a comforting story we told ourselves before we had the tools to see the terrifying truth. The last few decades of astronomical discovery have been a rude and violent awakening. The silence of space, we are learning, is not peaceful. It is the charged, predatory silence of an arena before a battle. And those gentle, twinkling lights are not serene. They are the raging, chaotic furnaces of alien suns, each one the center of a solar system that is likely nothing at all like our own. The true unveiling of this cosmic chaos began with the launch of orbital telescopes like NASA's Kepler mission. For the first time, we were able to stare, unblinking, at vast patches of the sky, waiting with infinite patience for the telltale flicker, the minuscule dimming of a star's light that would betray the presence of a planet passing in front of it. The data that poured back to Earth from these missions was a deluge, a flood that opened a cosmic Pandora's box. Before this, planets were a local phenomenon. There were the 8 we knew, and that was all. Suddenly, there were thousands, then tens of thousands. We went from a species that knew of one planetary system to a species that knew of so many they became mere numbers in a catalog. And as we sorted through this new overwhelming census of our galactic neighborhood, a deeply unsettling pattern began to emerge. The emerging catalog of worlds was not one of familiar Earth-like havens. It was a gallery of physical impossibilities, and outright nightmares. We found worlds that our early models of planet formation suggested shouldn't even be able to exist. We found planets bigger than Jupiter, orbiting their stars in a matter of hours. We found planets that seemed to be made of diamond, and planets that were darker than coal. The comforting clockwork vision of our own solar system was revealed to be not the rule, but a quiet, gentle exception in a galaxy that is overwhelmingly violent, chaotic, and fundamentally hostile to the fragile chemistry of life. This journey is a guided tour of that gallery of horrors, a carefully curated voyage to the most extreme, the most violent, and the most profoundly terrifying planets that humanity has yet discovered. We will not be searching for life. We will be witnessing the countless ways the universe can create a state of perfect and unending hell. Our first destination lies in a category of torment, defined by a singular, simple force, the overwhelming, inescapable, and eternal proximity to a star. There are worlds that are locked in a gravitational death grip, a state of tidal locking, where over eons the pull of their sun has slowed their rotation to a complete stop, forcing one hemisphere to forever face the searing furnace and the other to forever face the frozen void. On these worlds, the very concepts of day and night, of morning and evening, of a rising and setting sun do not exist. There is only the permanent blasted wasteland of the eternal dayside, a landscape under the perpetual gaze of a sky-filling star. And there is the permanent cryogenic abyss of the eternal nightside, a realm of absolute cold and unending darkness. The true horror of these worlds often unfolds in the region between these two impossible extremes, the perpetual twilight zone, the Terminator, where the boiling atmosphere of one hemisphere crashes into the frozen air of the other, creating weather patterns of unimaginable and perpetual violence. Our first exhibit in this gallery of nightmares is a planet that perfectly embodies this form of celestial torture. It is a world designated Corot 7b. When it was first discovered, there was a brief shining moment of excitement in the astronomical community. It was hailed as the first confirmed rocky exoplanet, a super-Earth that was not a gas giant, but a world with a solid surface. For a fleeting moment, we entertained the hopeful possibility that it could be a terrestrial cousin, another rocky world in the grand expanse. That hope was swiftly and utterly annihilated by the horrifying details of the data. Corot 7b is a world of perpetual fire and falling stone, orbiting its parent star at a distance 60 times closer than the Earth orbits our Sun. From the surface of its dayside, its star would not be a familiar distant orb of light. It would be a monstrous, sky-filling furnace, appearing 360 times larger in the sky than our own Sun. A permanent, terrifying, and unblinking eye of a celestial god, hanging motionless at the zenith for all eternity. Under its gaze, the very definition of a planet begins to break down. The temperature on this perpetually sun-scorched hemisphere reaches an almost incomprehensible 2600 degrees Celsius. This is a heat so intense, so far beyond any earthly experience, that the very ground itself, the silicate rock that makes up the planet's crust, cannot maintain a solid form. It melts. The entire dayside of Corot 7b is a vast, global, bubbling ocean of liquid rock, a sea of molten lava that glows with its own infernal orange light. Waves of liquid silicon, iron and magnesium, thousands of degrees hot, would crash against shores of solidifying minerals in the slightly cooler regions, in a landscape of pure geological agony. But even this is not the end of the horror. The heat is so extreme that the surface of this molten lava ocean itself evaporates. Just as water evaporates from our oceans, the rock itself turns into a gas, a vapor of minerals that rises to form the planet's atmosphere. The air on the dayside of Corot 7b is a thick, searing poisonous fog of vaporized sodium, potassium, and silicon monoxide. This is where the true nightmare begins its cycle. As the planet's rapid rotation drives ferocious winds that carry this superheated rock vapor across the planet, from the hemisphere of eternal day and towards the eternal darkness of the night side. On the night side of Coro 7b, the temperatures plummet to a cryogenic minus 235 degrees Celsius, a cold so profound that our own atmosphere's nitrogen and oxygen would freeze solid instantly. In this unending absolute darkness, a horrifying transformation takes place. The clouds of rock vapor that have drifted from the day side begin to cool rapidly and condense. First, they form a fine microscopic mist of mineral dust, a searing hot soot. These particles then collide and clump together, growing larger and heavier, forming into what can only be described as stone-cold pebbles and jagged gravel. When these rocky condensations become too heavy for the thin, cold atmosphere to support, they begin to fall. It rains on Coro 7b, but it is not a rain of water that offers the hope of life. It is a perpetual, unrelenting, and violent rain of rocks, a constant global shower of stone falling from a black sky onto a frozen, lava-scarred landscape. Imagine the sound of it, not the gentle pitter-patter of a summer shower, but a constant, deafening, hissing roar of a billion tiny impacts, a world perpetually sandblasting itself into oblivion. This is not a storm that passes. It is the planet's permanent, tortured state of being. To make this vision even more tragic, many scientists believe that Coro 7b was not born this way, but was violently and tortuously made into the hell it is today. They theorize that this planet is a Chthonian world, the burned-out skeletal core of what was once a majestic gas giant, a planet perhaps the size of our own Jupiter or Saturn, with beautiful rings and a retinue of icy moons. In this view, the planet formed in the colder, safer outer regions of its solar system. But over time, its orbit destabilized and it began a long, inward death spiral. As it drew closer to its star, the intense radiation and ferocious solar wind began the slow, agonizing process of stripping the planet of its thick, protective, gaseous atmosphere. Over millions of years, its beautiful clouds were boiled away into space, layer by agonizing layer, until all that was left was the naked, exposed, and now superheated rocky core we see today. What we are witnessing in Coro 7b is not just a horrifying world, it is a planetary corpse, a skeletal remnant still being perpetually tormented by the very star that murdered it. The horror of this world is a specific horror, one of fire, of torture, and of a violent, tragic past. But there are other, stranger, and perhaps even more profound forms of terror waiting for us in the cosmos. There are worlds where the horror comes not from the searing, overwhelming presence of a star, but from its complete and total and eternal absence. Our journey must now leave the planetary inferno of Coro 7b and venture into a realm of absolute cold, unending night, and a loneliness so profound it can swallow light itself. The horror of a world like Coro 7b is a horror of proximity, of an overwhelming and inescapable presence. It is the terror of being chained to a furnace, a torment of perpetual searing heat and light. But the universe is endlessly inventive in the nightmares it can construct. There exists another opposite form of planetary damnation, a horror born not of a sun's tyrannical presence, but of its complete and total absence. These are the loneliest and most tragic worlds in the entire cosmos. They are the rogue planets, the interstellar nomads, the orphans of the void. They are worlds that have no sun, no dawn, and no home. They are adrift, wandering the colossal empty gulfs between the stars in a state of eternal, frozen night, on a journey that began in violence and will never have a destination. These are not worlds that were born in darkness. They were cast into it. Our current understanding of solar system formation suggests that the early days are a period of breathtaking gravitational chaos. As giant planets coalesce and migrate, their immense gravity wells act as cosmic slingshots, flinging smaller, less fortunate worlds around with unimaginable force. For every planet that settles into a stable, peaceful orbit, many others are ejected completely, kicked out of their home systems with such velocity that they escape the pull of their parent star forever. Imagine the moment of this violent birth into exile. A young world, perhaps a vibrant gas giant or a nascent rocky planet with the first hints of a primordial ocean, is sent tumbling out of its celestial cradle, its sun shrinking behind it from a life-giving star to a bright point of light, and then over thousands of years to just another anonymous star in a slowly shifting canopy, before finally disappearing altogether. This is the fate of a rogue planet. To begin a journey of billions upon billions of years through a near-perfect vacuum, and a cold so profound it approaches absolute zero, a solitary ghost on an endless silent sea. Astronomers now believe that our Milky Way galaxy could be teeming with these lost worlds, that there may be billions or even trillions of these homeless orphans drifting through the dark, outnumbering the stars themselves. The galaxy, it seems, is also a graveyard. Our first encounter with one of these tragic wanderers is a planet designated PSO J318.522. It is a world that defies our conventional methods of detection. We cannot find it by the transit method, for it has no star to pass in front of. We cannot find it by measuring the gravitational wobble of a parent star, for it has none to pull upon. This planet was discovered because it is, in cosmic terms, exceptionally young, a mere infant of only 12 million years old. And because it is so young, it still glows, not with reflected light, but with the faint, deep, infrared embers of its own violent formation. It was this ghostly internal heat, this dying glow, that allowed our telescopes to spot it as a faint, lonely, magenta-hued object, moving silently through the constellation of Capricornus, untethered to any star. The data revealed a world of immense scale, a gas giant approximately 8 times more massive than our own Jupiter, a true titan of a world. But unlike Jupiter, which is the king of a vast and complex system, PSO J308.522 is a king in exile, with no moons, no rings, no cord of asteroids to accompany it on its unending journey. It is a world defined by its profound and absolute solitude, a colossal orphan, drifting alone in the interstellar night. To imagine what it would be like to exist in the upper atmosphere of this world is to imagine an experience of pure, unadulterated horror, a sensory deprivation of cosmic proportions. The first and most overwhelming reality would be the darkness, a blackness so complete and so perfect that it would make the darkest moonless night on Earth feel like a brilliantly lit afternoon. There is no sun. There is no day, no night, no morning, no evening, no dawn, no twilight. There is only the abyss. The only light visible would be the impossibly distant, faint, and utterly cold glow of the Milky Way, a silent, star-dusted ribbon painted across one half of the sky, a celestial decoration that would never move, never rise, and never set. There would be no sky in the way we understand it. There would only be the infinite, three-dimensional void of deep space, visible in all its terrifying, unending majesty. But this profound silence of light would be contrasted by a symphony of sound, the planet's own internal heat, the fading embers of its formation, is enough to drive a chaotic and violent atmosphere. The sound would be the ceaseless, supersonic howl of winds, churning the thick, multi-layered clouds of dust and gas in a state of perpetual storming twilight. And within this eternal howling darkness, a terrifying form of weather takes place. The planet's internal heat is great enough to keep metals and minerals in a gaseous state in its deeper atmospheric layers. As these hot clouds rise through convection into the upper, unimaginably cold layers of the atmosphere, a process of condensation begins. Clouds of silicate dust, the very stuff of rock and sand, would form, but deeper within these clouds, droplets of molten iron would begin to coalesce, like water droplets in a terrestrial storm cloud. As these droplets grow heavy, they begin to fall, through the absolute pitch-black darkness, through the howling, supersonic winds, a perpetual searing rain of molten metal descends. This is the eternal weather forecast for PSO J318.5, a dark, windy, and unimaginably cold day, with a steady, unending shower of liquid iron. The horror of such a world is therefore not just physical, but deeply existential. It is the horror of ultimate and irretrievable isolation. It is a world that has no anchor, no home, and no family. It is untethered from any system, a solitary ghost on a journey without purpose or destination. The very concept of time on such a world would lose all meaning. With no day or night, no seasons, no orbital year to mark its passage, time would stretch into a single, unchanging, and eternal moment of dark, cold, and stormy chaos. It is a vision of a cosmic damnation, to be created as a magnificent, giant world, only to be immediately cast out into a purposeless, unending void, doomed to wander in the cold and the dark until the very stars themselves burn out. We have now witnessed the inferno of a world chained too close to its star, and the cold, dark abyss of a world with no star at all. The former is a hell of overwhelming presence. The latter is a hell of overwhelming absence. But the universe has not yet exhausted its capacity to horrify us. There is another kind of planetary nightmare, a world that is not defined by its temperature or its loneliness, but by its sheer impossible scale and the evidence of a past so violent it has left a halo of shattered moons in its wake. Our journey now takes us to a world that would make Saturn, the jewel of our own solar system, look like a tiny, insignificant bauble. We journey now to a world surrounded by a ring system so vast it dwarfs our own sense of cosmic proportion, a place where the sky itself is a testament to cataclysmic destruction. The horror of a world like Coro 7b is a horror of proximity, an agony of overwhelming and inescapable presence. It is the torment of being perpetually chained to a sky-filling furnace, a physical hell born of too much light and too much heat. But the universe, in its infinite and indifferent capacity for creation, is not limited to a single form of torment. For every hell of fire, there is an equal and opposite hell of ice. We now turn our gaze away from the raging heart of a solar system and into the colossal empty gulfs between the stars, to witness a form of horror born not of a sun's tyrannical presence, but of its complete, total, and eternal absence. This is the realm of the rogue planets, the interstellar nomads, the orphans of the void. These are the loneliest and most tragic worlds in the entire cosmos. Worlds that have no sun, no dawn, and no home. They are adrift, wandering the near-perfect vacuum of interstellar space, in a state of eternal, frozen night, on a journey that began in unimaginable violence and will never, ever have a destination. These are the lost children of the galaxy. These worlds were not born in darkness. They were violently cast into it. Our current understanding of solar system formation suggests that the early days of any planetary system are a period of breathtaking gravitational chaos, a cosmic billiard game played with worlds for balls. As colossal gas giants coalesce and migrate, their immense gravity wells begin to dominate the system, acting as cosmic slingshots, flinging smaller, less fortunate planets around with unimaginable force. We must imagine the moment of this violent birth into exile. Picture a young, nascent world, perhaps a frozen gas giant, with the first hints of rings, or a rocky planet with primordial oceans of liquid methane, peacefully orbiting its young yellow star. Then a gravitational perturbation, a close encounter with a migrating giant sibling, seals its fate. It is not a collision, it is something far worse. It is a cosmic excommunication. In a gravitational exchange that lasts but a moment, the smaller world is torn from its stable orbit and flung with ferocious velocity out of its celestial cradle. Imagine the view from that doomed world. Its sun, its only source of light and life, shrinks behind it, first from a life-giving star to a brilliant point of light, and then, over the course of thousands of years, to just another anonymous star in a slowly shifting celestial canopy, before finally disappearing altogether into the overwhelming sea of distant suns. This is the genesis of a rogue planet, to begin a journey of billions upon billions of years through a cold so profound it approaches the absolute zero of space, a solitary ghost on an endless, silent, and uncaring sea. This is not a rare or unusual fate. Astronomers now believe that our Milky Way galaxy is teeming with these lost worlds, that there may be billions or even trillions of these homeless orphans drifting through the dark, potentially outnumbering the stars themselves. The vast silent emptiness between the stars is, in fact, a celestial graveyard, haunted by the frozen corpses of planets that were murdered by the very systems that created them. Our first direct encounter with one of these tragic wanderers is a planet designated PSO J3Pan18. It is a world that defies our conventional methods of detection. We cannot find it by watching a star dim, for it has no star to pass in front of. We cannot find it by measuring the gravitational wobble of a parent star, for it has none to pull upon. This planet was discovered because it is, in cosmic terms, exceptionally young, a mere infant of only 12 million years. And because it is so young, it still glows, not with the reflected light of a sun, but with the faint, deep, and mournful infrared embers of its own violent formation. It was this ghostly, internal heat, this dying blush of a planetary birth, that allowed our telescopes on Earth to finally spot it. A faint, lonely, magenta-hued object moving silently and inexorably through the constellation of Capricornus. A king with no kingdom, a world with no star. The data returned from this faint, lonely light painted a picture of a world of immense scale and profound isolation. PSO J318.522 is a true titan, a gas giant approximately 8 times more massive than our own Jupiter. In a normal solar system, such a world would be a king, the dominant gravitational force, surrounded by a complex court of dozens of moons and adorned with majestic rings. But this is a king in exile. It has no moons. It has no rings. It has no retinue of asteroids to accompany it on its unending journey. It is a world defined by its profound and absolute solitude. It is a colossal orphan, its own internal heat, creating a turbulent, chaotic atmosphere that rages against an eternal backdrop of perfect, cryogenic cold. It is a planetary ember, a dying coal, that will slowly, over the course of billions of years, cool and fade until it becomes just another frozen, invisible rock, a ghost undetectable even to our most advanced instruments, its existence known only to the silent, uncaring void through which it tumbles. To imagine what it would be like to float in the upper atmosphere of this world is to imagine an experience of pure, unadulterated cosmic horror, a sensory deprivation of galactic proportions. The first and most overwhelming reality would be the darkness, a blackness so complete, so perfect, and so absolute that it would make the deepest cave on the darkest moonless night on Earth feel like a brilliantly lit afternoon. There is no sun, there is no day, no night, no morning, no evening, no dawn, no twilight. There is only the abyss. The stars would not twinkle. In the absence of a thick, distorting atmosphere, they would be hard, cold, unblinking points of light, a fixed and terrifying wallpaper of distant fires. The only significant feature would be the impossible, ghostly stain of the Milky Way, a silent, star-dusted river of light painted across one half of the sky, a celestial decoration that would never move, never rise, and never set. There would be no horizon, no sky in the way we understand it. There would only be the infinite, three-dimensional void of deep space, visible in all its terrifying, unending, and vertiginous majesty. But this profound silence of light would be violently contrasted by a symphony of sound. The planet's own internal heat, the fading embers of its formation, is still powerful enough to drive a chaotic and ferocious atmosphere. The sound would be the ceaseless, supersonic howl of winds, churning the thick, multi-layered clouds of silicate dust and frozen hydrocarbon gases in a state of perpetual, storming chaos. This is not the familiar sound of wind on Earth, which is the sound of air moving against objects. This would be the sound of the air itself, a deep, resonant, planetary groan, the vibration of a world in a constant state of internal turmoil with no external source of energy to calm it. And deep within this eternal howling darkness, a terrifying and uniquely alien form of weather takes place. The planet's deep interior is still hot enough, and under enough pressure to keep metals like iron in a gaseous, vaporized state. Great plumes of this metallic vapor rise through convection into the upper, unimaginably cold layers of the atmosphere. Here, a process of condensation begins. Clouds not of water, but of iron and silicate dust, would form in the blackness. Within these clouds, droplets of pure molten iron would begin to coalesce, like hailstones in a terrestrial thunderhead. As these metallic droplets grow heavy, they begin to fall through the absolute pitch-black darkness, through the howling, supersonic winds. A perpetual, searing rain of molten metal descends. This is the eternal weather forecast for PSO J318. A dark, windy, and unimaginably cold day, with a steady, unending shower of liquid iron. A rain that would instantly incinerate and melt anything it touched. A storm with no beginning and no end. The horror of such a world is therefore not just physical, but deeply and profoundly existential. It is the horror of ultimate and irretrievable isolation, a loneliness on a scale that the human mind is not equipped to comprehend. It is a world that has no anchor, no home, no family, and no purpose. It is untethered from any system, a solitary ghost on a journey without a destination. The very concept of time on such a world would lose all meaning, with no day or night, no seasons, and no orbital year to mark its passage. Time would stretch into a single, unchanging, and eternal moment of dark, cold, and stormy chaos. It is the ultimate vision of a cosmic damnation, to be created as a magnificent, titanic world, only to be immediately and violently cast out into a purposeless, unending void, doomed to wander in the cold and the dark until the very stars themselves burn out and the universe fades to black. It is the loneliest thing in the universe. We have now witnessed the raging inferno of a world chained too close to its star, and the cold, dark, and desolate abyss of a world with no star at all. The former is a hell of overwhelming presence, of perpetual torture. The latter is a hell of overwhelming absence, of perpetual solitude. But the universe has not yet exhausted its capacity to create nightmares. There is another kind of planetary horror, a world that is not defined by its stars' influence but by its own sheer monstrous scale. A world so massive that its own gravity has become an engine of cataclysmic destruction. A world that wears a glorious, terrifying halo made from the pulverized and shattered remains of its own children. Our journey now takes us to a place of impossible grandeur and unimaginable violence, to a world that would make Saturn, the jewel of our own solar system, look like a pale and insignificant imitation. We journey now to the true Lord of the Rings. We have journeyed to the inferno of a world chained too close to its star, a hell of overwhelming physical presence. We have then plunged into the opposite extreme, the cold, dark, and desolate abyss of a world with no star at all, a hell of profound and eternal absence. The universe, it seems, builds its nightmares from the extremities of existence. But there is another kind of planetary horror, one that is not defined by its temperature or its loneliness, but by its own sheer monstrous gravitational dominance. This is the horror of a world so massive that its very existence becomes an engine of cataclysmic destruction, a cosmic tyrant that wears a glorious, terrifying halo made from the pulverized and shattered remains of its own children. Our journey now takes us to a place of impossible grandeur and unimaginable violence, to a world that would make Saturn, the bejeweled king of our own solar system, look like a pale and insignificant imitation. We journey now to the true Lord of the Rings, the super Jupiter known as J14007b. To comprehend the spectacle of J14007b is to confront the limits of our own cosmic imagination. We look upon the rings of Saturn, a structure so vast that all the planets could fit within its span, and we see the pinnacle of celestial beauty. But the ring system of J14007b is an entirely different order of being. It is a structure of such impossible and terrifying scale that it dwarfs not just Saturn, but our very sense of proportion. If we were to replace Saturn with J1407b in our own night sky, its rings would dominate our world. They would stretch from horizon to horizon, a colossal, luminous archway brighter and wider than 100 full moons. They would be the single, overwhelming, and permanent feature of our reality, a sight of such sublime and terrifying grandeur that it would reshape our mythology, our science, and our sanity. This celestial halo is 200 times more extensive than Saturn's, spanning a diameter of over 180 million kilometers. This is a distance greater than that between the Earth and the Sun. It is a structure so vast that our own planet, with its oceans and continents and civilizations, would be but a microscopic speck of dust lost within its immensity. But this is no serene and peaceful structure of ice and dust. It is a celestial crime scene, a swirling, chaotic memorial to a dead family of moons. The very existence of such a colossal ring system screams of a past of unimaginable violence. Rings of this scale do not form peacefully. They are born from cataclysm. J1407b is not just a gas giant. It is a super Jupiter, a behemoth somewhere between 10 and 40 times the mass of our own solar system's largest planet. An object of this mass possesses a gravitational field of tyrannical power. The most likely origin story for its magnificent rings is therefore a story of cosmic cannibalism. It is highly probable that J1407b was once orbited by a retinue of large icy moons, each one a world in its own right, perhaps the size of our own moon or even Mars. Over the eons, the orbits of these moons would have decayed, or gravitational resonances would have pulled them into crossing paths. What followed was either a slow, agonizing execution, as a moon strayed too close and was relentlessly torn apart by the planet's tidal forces, shredded into its constituent ice and rock, Or perhaps it was a sudden, spectacular assassination, a high-speed collision between two large moons that shattered them both in an instant, a cosmic explosion that would have outshone its parent star, leaving behind a rapidly expanding cloud of debris. The beautiful, luminous rings we can now infer are the result of that destruction. They are the pulverized bones and dust of shattered worlds, a constant orbiting reminder that this magnificent planet is also a world eater. Within this vast celestial tomb, there are further mysteries. The rings are not uniform. They are broken up by a series of immense gaps, dark lanes of emptiness in the swirling debris. One of these gaps is particularly large, a profound scar in the fabric of the rings, which astronomers believe indicates the presence of an unseen object, a large moon that has carved out its own path. This presents a new chilling narrative. Is this moon a lone survivor of the ancient cataclysm? A world that somehow escaped the fate of its siblings and now orbits in solitude, forever carving a path through their remains? Or is it a new world, a child of the apocalypse that has slowly coalesced from the debris of its shattered brethren, a moon born from the ashes of its own annihilated family? The gaps in the rings are not just a feature of orbital mechanics. They are a silent, unfolding story. A story that suggests that even billions of years after the initial cataclysm, the processes of creation and destruction within this terrifyingly beautiful system are still ongoing. The horror of J1407b is not limited to its violent past. It extends to the very nature of the planet itself. The immense mass of this object places it in a strange and ambiguous celestial purgatory. It is far too massive to be considered a typical planet formed in the way that Jupiter was. This has led many astronomers to believe that J1407b is not a planet at all, but a failed star, a brown dwarf, an object that was born from a collapsing cloud of gas and dust. Just like a true star, but which never managed to accumulate enough mass to ignite the fires of nuclear fusion in its core. It is a star that was stillborn. This adds a layer of profound cosmic irony to its character. J1407b is a cosmic tyrant in its own system, a gravitational monster that destroys its own children. And yet, on a galactic scale, it is a failure, an object that aspired to be a sun and fell short, doomed to spend its entire existence as a dimly glowing ember, radiating away the last of its primordial heat. To be on a hypothetical moon orbiting this world would be to exist in a permanent, menacing twilight, illuminated not by the life-giving light of a true sun, but by the dull, ominous, deep red or magenta glow of this failed star. A demon's eye hanging in the sky, surrounded by the ghosts of the worlds it has already consumed. We have now witnessed the hell of a world too close to its star, the desolate abyss of a world with no star at all, and the terrifying grandeur of a world destroyer that wears the remains of its own moons as a crown. These are horrors of physics, of heat, of cold, and of gravity. But what of the horrors of chemistry? What terrors await on a world that appears at first glance beautiful and serene? A world that lures us in with a familiar, comforting color, the deep sapphire blue of our own terrestrial oceans. A color that promises tranquility, but which delivers a nightmare of unimaginable and exquisite pain. Our journey now takes a turn, into a world where the very air itself is a weapon, and the weather is a storm of flying glass. Having journeyed to the inferno of a world chained to its star, and plunged into the opposite abyss of a world with no star at all, we have witnessed the two fundamental extremes of planetary existence. One is a hell of overwhelming physical presence, a torture of perpetual light and heat. The other is a hell of overwhelming absence, a damnation of eternal darkness and cold. They are the horrors of the environment. But the universe, in its infinite and chillingly creative capacity, is not limited to such external torments. There exists another, more intimate kind of planetary nightmare. A horror that arises not from the conditions imposed upon a world, but from the intrinsic nature of the world itself. This is the horror of a celestial object, so massive, so gravitationally dominant, that its very being becomes an engine of cataclysmic destruction. It is the terror of a cosmic tyrant, a god planet that reigns over its system not as a peaceful anchor, but as an insatiable predator. Our journey now takes us to a place of such impossible grandeur and such terrifying violence, that it reshapes our very understanding of what a planet can be. We journey to the court of the true Lord of the Rings, the super Jupiter known as J1407b. To simply state that the ring system of J1407b is large is a profound understatement. It is an act of linguistic failure. We must begin by attempting to comprehend its spectacle, for it is a structure of such impossible and terrifying scale that it dwarfs not just Saturn, but our very sense of cosmic proportion. When astronomers first detected this world using the transit method, they were baffled. They witnessed a complex, deeply erratic dimming of its parent star's light that lasted for nearly 2 months. It was not the clean, simple dip of a solid planet, but a chaotic, flickering dance of light and shadow, hinting at a structure of immense and intricate complexity. What the data eventually revealed was a ring system so vast it seems to belong to the realm of mythology, not astronomy. If we were to replace Saturn with J1407b in our own solar system, it would shatter our reality. Its colossal rings would stretch across our entire night sky, a luminous, impossible archway of light, brighter and wider than 100 full moons combined. True darkness would cease to exist on Earth. Our nights would be bathed in its constant, ghostly, reflected light. It would become the single, overwhelming, and permanent feature of our existence, a new god in our heavens, a sight of such sublime and terrifying grandeur that it would rewrite our science, our religions, and our sanity. This celestial halo is 200 times more extensive than Saturn's, spanning a diameter of over 180 million kilometers. It is a structure so vast that the entire orbit of Venus could fit comfortably within its grasp. Our own planet, with all its oceans, continents, and civilizations, would be but a microscopic, insignificant speck of dust lost within its immensity. The very existence of such a colossal ring system screams of a past of almost unimaginable violence. Rings of this scale, containing the mass of entire worlds, do not form peacefully from the gentle accretion of a protoplanetary disk. They are born from cataclysm. They are born from death. J1407b is not just a gas giant. It is a super Jupiter, a true behemoth somewhere between 10 and 40 times the mass of our own solar system's largest planet. An object of this mass possesses a gravitational field of tyrannical power, a force that dictates the fate of everything in its vicinity. The most likely origin story for its magnificent rings is therefore a story of cosmic cannibalism on a planetary scale. It is highly probable that J1407b was once orbited by a majestic retinue of large icy moons, each one a significant world in its own right, perhaps the size of our own moon or even the planet Mars. Over the eons, as their orbits decayed, or as gravitational resonances pulled them into crossing paths, they would have met their doom. Perhaps it was a slow, agonizing execution, a moon straying too close, crossing the Roche limit, the invisible line of death, and being relentlessly and mercilessly torn apart by the planet's tidal forces, stretched and unzipped by gravity until it was shredded into its constituent ice and rock. Or perhaps more horrifically, it was a sudden, spectacular assassination. A high-speed, system-shattering collision between two large moons that vaporized them both in an instant an explosion that would have outshone its parent star, leaving behind a rapidly expanding incandescent cloud of planetary blood and bone. The beautiful, luminous rings we can now infer are the direct result of that ancient destruction. They are the pulverized remains of shattered worlds, a constant orbiting memorial to a dead family of moons. This is not a serene and peaceful structure of fine uniform dust. It is a chaotic heterogeneous debris field, a swirling testament to its violent creation. It is a mixture of fine crystalline ice dust that catches the light of the distant star, but also vast swarms of gravel and continent-sized boulders of ice and rock, all orbiting at thousands of kilometers per hour. It is a celestial crime scene, preserved for millions of years. The sublime beauty of the rings, their impossible scale, and their gentle reflected light is a deceptive mask that hides a truth of absolute and unforgiving violence. To look upon them is to look upon the beautiful, shimmering ghost of a murdered family of worlds, a family murdered by the very parent they orbited. And within this vast celestial tomb, there are further, more active mysteries. The rings are not a solid, uniform sheet. They are broken up by a series of immense and intricate gaps, dark, empty lanes in the swirling debris, each one wider than the diameter of our own planet. One of these gaps is particularly large and profound, a clear, dark scar in the fabric of the rings, which astronomers believe indicates the presence of a massive, unseen object, a large exomoon that has carved out its own path through the graveyard. This presents a new, chilling narrative that is still unfolding. Is this moon a lone, stoic survivor of the ancient cataclysm? A world that somehow, by a quirk of fate, escaped the fate of its siblings and now orbits in a state of profound solitude, forever carving a silent, empty path through their remains? Or is it a new world, a child of the apocalypse, that has slowly and patiently coalesced from the very debris of its shattered brethren? A moon literally born from the ashes of its own annihilated family, a vulture feeding on the corpses of its ancestors. The gaps in the rings are not just a feature of orbital mechanics. They are a silent, unfolding story. A story that suggests that even millions of years after the initial cataclysm, the brutal processes of creation and destruction within this terrifyingly beautiful system are still ongoing. The horror of J14U07b is not limited to its violent, destructive past. It extends to the very nature of the planet itself. The immense mass of this object places it in a strange and ambiguous celestial purgatory. It is far too massive to be considered a typical planet formed in the way that our own Jupiter was. This has led many astronomers to believe that J14U07b is not a planet at all, but a failed star, a brown dwarf, an object that was born from the gravitational collapse of a cloud of gas and dust, just like a true star, but which never managed to accumulate enough mass to ignite the stable, life-giving fires of nuclear fusion in its core. It is a star that was stillborn. This adds a layer of profound cosmic irony to its character. J1407b is a cosmic tyrant in its own system, a gravitational monster that destroys its own children. Yet, on a galactic scale, it is a magnificent failure, an object that aspired to be a sun and fell short, doomed to spend its entire existence as a dimly glowing ember, slowly radiating away the last of its primordial formation heat. To be on a hypothetical moon orbiting this world would be to exist in a permanent, menacing, and deeply unsettling twilight, illuminated not by the bright, life-giving light of a true sun, but by the dull, ominous, deep red or magenta glow of this failed star, a demon's eye hanging in the sky, surrounded by the ghosts of the worlds it has already consumed. We have now witnessed the torment of a world with too much of a star, the desolate abyss of a world with none at all, and the terrible majesty of a world destroyer that wears the remains of its own moons as a celestial crown. These are horrors of physics, of grand, overwhelming forces of heat, cold, and gravity. But the universe is also a master of the subtle and the insidious. It can craft nightmares not just from the brute force of gravity and scale, but from the delicate and inescapable laws of chemistry. What terrors await on a world that from a distance appears beautiful, serene, and even welcoming, a world that lures us in with a familiar, comforting color, the deep, sapphire blue of a terrestrial ocean, a color that promises tranquility, but which reveals upon closer inspection a weather system of exquisite, beautiful, and unimaginable pain. Our journey now takes a turn into a world where the very air itself is a weapon, and the weather is a perpetual supersonic storm of flying glass. Our journey so far has been a descent into the raw, brutal extremities of planetary existence. We have witnessed the physical hell of a world chained too close to its star, a tortured sphere of lava and rock rain. We have plunged into the opposite abyss, the existential hell of an orphan world cast out into an eternity of cold and darkness. We then stood before the terrifying grandeur of a world eater, a cosmic tyrant so massive it wears the pulverized remains of its own moons as a celestial crown. These are the horrors of physics, of grand, overwhelming forces of heat, cold, and gravity. But the universe is also a master of the subtle and the insidious. It can craft nightmares not just from the brute force of a star or the crushing power of a gas giant, but from the delicate and inescapable laws of chemistry and optics. We travel now to a world that, from a great distance, appears to be the most beautiful and welcoming place we have yet encountered. A world that lures us in with a familiar, comforting color, the deep sapphire blue of a terrestrial ocean, a color that in our own experience signifies life, tranquility, and peace. But on this world, this color is a lie. It is the beautiful face of a monster, and it signifies a weather system of exquisite, perpetual, and unimaginable violence. This celestial sapphire is the exoplanet designated HD 1189733b, a gas giant 64 light-years away in the small constellation of Vulpecula. From a distance, it is a vision of serene beauty. Using the Hubble Space Telescope, astronomers were able to analyze the light reflecting from its atmosphere and determine its true color. The result was the breathtaking image of a deep, rich cobalt blue dot, a world that looks hauntingly like our own Earth, as seen from the depths of space. It is a celestial jewel, a perfect azure sphere, hanging in the blackness. The temptation is to imagine vast planet-wide oceans of liquid water, a world of calm seas and gentle blue skies. This initial beautiful image is what makes the reality of this planet so profoundly horrifying. The beautiful blue of HD 1A9733b has nothing to do with water, with oceans, or with life. It is the color of a global, unending storm of flying glass. The deep blue hue is the optical signature of Rayleigh scattering, the same physical phenomenon that makes our own sky blue. But on Earth, sunlight scatters off the tiny molecules of nitrogen and oxygen in our atmosphere. On HD 1A9733b, the light of its star is scattering off something far more sinister. Its upper atmosphere is saturated with microscopic silicate particles, the raw chemical ingredients of sand and glass, which have condensed out of the planet's searingly hot atmosphere. The universe has, in a moment of profound and cruel irony, used the same gentle physics that gives us our beautiful blue sky to paint a picture of paradise on the face of a world that is, in reality, a maelstrom of unimaginable pain. The illusion of tranquility is shattered the moment we look closer at the planet's atmosphere. This is a world classified as a hot Jupiter, orbiting its star at a blistering proximity, completing a full year in just over 2 Earth days. This proximity heats its atmosphere to a staggering 1000 degrees Celsius. At this temperature, the silicate particles are not solid grains of sand. They are droplets of molten glass, and they are not drifting gently in a calm sky. They are being driven by winds of almost incomprehensible speed. On Earth, our most powerful hurricanes, our most violent storms can produce winds of 300 to 400 kilometers per hour. On HD 19733b, the winds move at over 7,000 kilometers per hour. That is 2 kilometers every single second. It is a wind that moves at 7 times the speed of sound. The very air on this world is a perpetual sonic boom. This is not a storm that comes and goes. It is the planet's permanent atmospheric state, a global supersonic hurricane driven by the immense temperature difference between the side of the planet perpetually facing its star and the side perpetually facing away. We must now combine these elements to form a true picture of the weather on this world. This is not a rain that falls down on a tidally locked gas giant. The winds blow sideways, from the searingly hot day side to the cooler night side. The rain on HD 1899733b is therefore a perpetual, horizontal, supersonic blizzard, but it is not a blizzard of soft, frozen water. It is a blizzard of jagged, molten glass shards, all of them flying sideways at 7 times the speed of sound. It is a storm of 1,000 blades, a planetary sandblaster that would flay, shred, and vaporize any object that entered it in less than an instant. The exquisite sapphire beauty of this world is the color of this storm. It is the light reflecting off a global, unending tempest of flying knives. The horror of HD 189733b is therefore a horror of deception. It is the terror of a beautiful thing that is, in reality, an instrument of pure physical violence. It reminds us that our earthly intuitions, our sense of what is beautiful and safe, are meaningless in the wider cosmos. This entire horrifying weather system is the inevitable result of the planet's circumstances. As a hot Jupiter, it is locked in a deadly dance with its parent star. The intense stellar radiation bombards the day side, creating a massive hotspot. The night side facing away is significantly cooler, though still incredibly hot by earthly standards. This colossal temperature gradient between the two hemispheres is the engine that drives the planet's ferocious winds. The atmosphere is in a constant, desperate, and violent attempt to equalize its temperature, a process that results in the supersonic jet streams that carry the molten glass around the planet. The silicate particles themselves are likely dredged up from deeper within the planet's atmosphere by powerful convection currents before condensing into glass clouds in the upper layers. The planet is, in effect, constantly regurgitating its own substance and turning it into a high-velocity weapon. It is a self-mutilating world, trapped in a feedback loop of beautiful chemical violence. Its beauty is not a sign of life. It is the symptom of its agony. We have now witnessed the hell of fire, the abyss of ice, the terror of gravitational destruction, and the exquisite, violent deception of a world that rains glass. These are all horrors of overwhelming, chaotic energy. But what of a world that is defined by the opposite? A planet that is not a raging storm, but a place of profound and unsettling stillness. A world that has mastered the art of disappearance. A celestial body that consumes light itself, reflecting almost nothing back into the void. Our journey must now take us to the darkest object ever discovered by humanity. A world that is less a planet and more a hole in the fabric of the universe. A place of pure, featureless, and absolute blackness. Our cosmic tour of nightmares has so far navigated the brutal extremities of physics. We have witnessed the physical hell of a world chained to a furnace, and the existential hell of an orphan world cast into the void. We have stood in awe of a gravitational tyrant that wears the remains of its own moons as a celestial crown. These are horrors of the grand and the overwhelming, of fire, of ice, and of sheer destructive force. But the universe, in its infinite and chillingly inventive capacity, is also a master of the subtle, the deceptive, and the insidious. We now turn our attention to a form of horror that is perhaps the most unsettling of all, the horror that lurks behind a mask of exquisite beauty. We journey to a world that, from a great distance, appears to be a beacon of tranquility in the cosmic dark, a place that promises the familiar comfort of home, only to reveal a reality of such exquisite and perpetual violence that it redefines the very meaning of a storm. This is the horror of betrayal, a lesson written in a beautiful sapphire blue across the face of a monster. This celestial jewel is the exoplanet designated HD 189733b, a gas giant 64 light-years away in the small constellation of Vulpecula, the Fox. From a great distance, it is a vision of profound and serene beauty. Using the powerful spectrographs of the Hubble Space Telescope, astronomers were able to do something remarkable. They measured the albedo of the planet, the specific way its atmosphere reflects and absorbs light, and from that data, they were able to determine its true, visible color. The result was the breathtaking image of a deep, rich, cobalt blue dot. It looks hauntingly like our own Earth as seen from the depths of space, the iconic pale blue dot that Carl Sagan spoke of with such reverence. The immediate, hopeful, and entirely wrong assumption is to imagine vast planet-wide oceans of liquid water, a world of calm, deep seas and gentle blue skies. For a moment, when this discovery was announced, it was possible to dream that we had found a cosmic sibling, a beautiful water world that might harbor the conditions for life. This initial beautiful image is what makes the truth of this planet so profoundly, so viscerally horrifying. The beautiful, calming, life-affirming blue of HD 190,033b has absolutely nothing to do with water, with oceans, or with life. It is the color of a global, unending, and supersonic storm of flying, molten glass. The deep blue hue is the optical signature of Rayleigh scattering, the same gentle physical phenomenon that makes our own sky on Earth a soft, welcoming blue. But on Earth, the sun's light is scattering off the tiny, harmless molecules of nitrogen and oxygen in our atmosphere. On HD 189,733b, the light of its star is scattering off something far more sinister. Its upper atmosphere, a searing inferno of over 1,000 degrees Celsius, is saturated with clouds not of water vapor, but of condensing silicate particles, the raw chemical ingredients of sand and glass. The universe has, in a moment of profound and exquisitely cruel irony, used the same gentle physics that gives us the color of a summer sky to paint a picture of paradise on the face of a world that is, in reality, a maelstrom of unimaginable and perpetual pain. The color we associate with tranquility is, on this world, the spectral signature of a planetary sandblaster. The sheer violence of this world's atmosphere is almost beyond our capacity to model. This is a hot Jupiter orbiting its parent star so closely that it completes a full year in just over 2 Earth days. This proximity locks it into a state of perpetual torture, which in turn drives a weather system of almost incomprehensible speed. On Earth, our most powerful Category 5 hurricanes, our most violent and destructive storms, can produce winds of 300 to 400 kilometers per hour. On HD 19733b, the winds move at over 7,000 kilometers per hour. That is 2 kilometers every single second. A wind that moves at 7 times the speed of sound. The very air on this world is a permanent, planet-wide sonic boom, a constant, deafening roar that would be the only sound you would ever hear. and caught within this supersonic global hurricane is the glass. The silicate particles condense in the upper atmosphere into what can only be described as shards of molten glass. The rain on this world is therefore a perpetual horizontal supersonic blizzard of this flying red-hot shrapnel. It is a storm of 1,000 blades, a river of flying daggers that flows endlessly around the planet, flaying, shredding, and incinerating everything in its path. To be caught in this atmosphere would be to be simultaneously vaporized by the heat and disintegrated by 1 billion tiny supersonic impacts in the same instant. The exquisite sapphire beauty of this world is the color of this storm. It is the light reflecting off a global, unending tempest of flying knives. This entire horrifying weather system is the inevitable and permanent result of the planet's cursed circumstances. As a hot Jupiter, it is locked in a deadly, intimate dance with its parent star. The intense stellar radiation bombards the planet's day side, creating a colossal hotspot, a permanent substellar point that acts as a giant boiler. The night side, facing forever away into the cold of space, is significantly cooler, though still incredibly hot by any terrestrial standard. This massive temperature gradient between the two hemispheres, a difference of hundreds of degrees, is the thermonuclear engine that drives the planet's ferocious winds. The atmosphere is in a constant, desperate, and spectacularly violent attempt to equalize its temperature, a process that results in the supersonic jet streams that drag the molten glass sideways around the planet in a never-ending cycle. The silicate particles themselves are likely dredged up by powerful convection currents from deeper within the planet's searingly hot interior, before condensing into clouds of glass in the upper layers ready to be weaponized by the wind. The planet is, in effect, constantly regurgitating its own substance and turning it into high-velocity shrapnel. It is a self-mutilating world, trapped in a feedback loop of beautiful chemical violence. Its beauty is not a sign of life or hope. It is the symptom of its unending atmospheric agony. We have now stared into the heart of a beautiful monster, a world that weaponizes its own atmosphere and uses the physics of beauty to advertise a state of perpetual, violent torment. The terror here is one of insidious deception, of a chemical and kinetic nightmare hidden behind the universe's most welcoming color. But this is a horror of chaotic, vibrant energy. What of a world where energy is not the source of horror, but is instead consumed by it? What happens when a planet is not a brilliant beacon of blue, but a perfect and absolute void of black? Our journey must now take us to a place that defies the very nature of what a planet should be, a world that has mastered the art of disappearance, a celestial body that swallows light itself, reflecting almost nothing back into the unforgiving, empty night. We travel now to a world that is less a planet and more a hole in the fabric of the universe. Our cosmic tour has so far navigated the realms of explicit, energetic violence. We have been burned, frozen, and shattered by the brute forces of physics. But the universe is not only a master of the overt and the spectacular, it is also a master of the subtle, the psychological, and the insidious. We now turn our attention from a horror you can see to a horror defined by its very invisibility. We journey away from the dazzling, painful light of a world that rains glass and into a realm of pure, unadulterated, and all-consuming darkness. We have learned to associate light with knowledge, with life, and with beauty, and to see darkness as a simple absence. But our next destination will teach us a more terrifying lesson, that darkness can also be an active, physical presence, a force that does not just occupy the void, but creates it. This is not the gentle, temporary darkness of a terrestrial night. This is a permanent, absolute, and hungry darkness, the darkness of a world that has become a hole in the fabric of the universe itself. This world is designated TRES 2b, a gas giant, a hot Jupiter located some 750 light years from Earth, in the constellation of Draco. When it was first discovered, it seemed to be another routine addition to the growing catalog of its class, a massive planet orbiting perilously close to its star. But as astronomers refined their observations, a deeply bizarre and unsettling anomaly began to emerge from the data. Using the incredibly sensitive photometers of the Kepler Space Telescope, they were able to measure the planet's albedo, the precise amount of starlight that it reflects back into space. The method is simple in theory. As the planet passes behind its star in what is called a secondary eclipse, the total light from the system should dip by a tiny, almost imperceptible amount, the amount corresponding to the light that was being reflected by the planet itself. When astronomers performed this measurement for TRES 2b, they found almost nothing. The dip in light was so minuscule, so close to zero, that it was initially dismissed as a statistical error, but repeated observations confirmed the terrifying truth. The planet was reflecting a statistically insignificant amount of the light that fell upon it. This discovery is what makes TRES 2b a true cosmic monster. To put its blackness into perspective, we must consider the nature of darkness in our own world. Even our darkest natural surfaces, like fresh asphalt or black volcanic rock, still reflect around 4% of the light that hits them. Our own gas giants like Jupiter are shrouded in bright, highly reflective clouds of ammonia ice that bounce back over a third of the sunlight they receive, making them brilliant beacons in our night sky. TRES 2b, the data revealed, reflects less than 1% of the starlight it receives. It is a world of almost perfect and absolute blackness, a celestial object darker than fresh coal, darker than the blackest soot, darker than a pool of oil in a lightless cave. It is an anti-planet, a celestial object whose primary and most defining characteristic is an almost complete absence of reflection. Its existence challenges our fundamental assumptions about what a planet should look like, revealing that a world can be so dark that it becomes a physical manifestation of the void. The profound darkness of TRES 2b is not the result of a lack of light. On the contrary, it orbits its star at an incredibly close distance, and is therefore bathed in an intense, unrelenting, and eternal torrent of stellar radiation. Its blackness is not the cold, empty black of interstellar space, but the suffocating, absorbing black of a furnace lined with a perfect, light-eating material. This creates a horrifying paradox. The planet's atmosphere is heated to a searing temperature of nearly 1,000 degrees Celsius, a heat so intense that the planet itself should be a brilliant source of thermal radiation, glowing like a hot coal, and it does. But its visible appearance is that of pure black. It is a stealth inferno, a world that would burn you to a crisp even as it remained almost perfectly invisible against the backdrop of space. The leading scientific theory for this bizarre property is that the planet's extreme temperature has created an exotic and unique atmospheric chemistry. The atmosphere is likely laden with a thick, heavy haze of light-absorbing chemical compounds, such as vaporized sodium, vaporized potassium, and gaseous titanium oxide. In the atmospheres of cooler planets, these compounds might condense into bright reflective clouds. But in the searing furnace of TRES 2b, they remain in a gaseous state, acting as a thick, planetary shroud of light-eating vapor, a cosmic sponge that traps the energy from the star with near-perfect efficiency and converts it almost entirely into heat. To imagine orbiting this world would be to witness a sight of profound and deeply unsettling existential horror. As your vessel approached, you would not see a planetary sphere growing larger in your view. You would see a perfectly circular patch of the star field being deleted from existence. It would appear as a hole in reality, a circle of pure nothingness, its silhouette defined only by the distant stars it is occulting. It is a featureless, three-dimensional void where a planet should be, a glitch in the fabric of the cosmos. And as you drew closer, you would begin to perceive its true nature. It is not completely invisible, because it is so incredibly hot from all the light it absorbs. The planet emits its own faint thermal radiation. It glows, but it does not glow with the bright reflected light of a normal world. It glows with a dull, menacing, deep blood-red light, like a colossal piece of cosmic charcoal heated in a furnace to the point of incandescence. It is a darkness made visible, a smoldering, angry, and lightless ember hanging in the eternal night. There would be no visible weather, no swirling cloud bands like Jupiter, no storms to see, no continents, no oceans. There would only be the uniform, featureless, and suffocating black-red shroud of its light-eating atmosphere. A vision of pure, monotonous, and absolute menace. The horror of Tres 2b is therefore a deep and psychological one, a terror that preys on our most primal fears. It is the horror of the void, of nothingness given planetary form. It is a place that consumes information and gives none of it back. A world that defies our most fundamental sense, our sight, by simply refusing to be seen. It is the physical embodiment of our innate fear of the dark, of the unknown, and of the featureless abyss where monsters may lurk. It is a place where you could not see your own hand in front of your face, yet you would be simultaneously burning to death from the intense, absorbed heat that radiates from the planet's very substance. It is the ultimate paradox, a world that is both an inferno and a void. It represents a different kind of cosmic dead end. Not a world murdered by its star, but a world that has chosen a kind of passive, all-consuming, nihilistic suicide. A world that is slowly and deliberately erasing itself from the visible universe, one photon at a time. We have now seen a world of fire, a world of ice, a world of shattered moons, a world of glass storms, and finally a world of pure light-swallowing blackness. These are all planets that exist in a state of horrifying but for the most part stable equilibrium. Their versions of hell are perpetual, and in their own way unchanging. But what of a world that is not in a stable state of torment, but is instead in the very act of dying? A world that is being actively, violently, and visibly consumed by its star, right now as we watch from our distant, helpless vantage point. Our journey must now take us to a doomed world, a planet caught in its final, agonizing death spiral. A place that allows us to witness the slow, brutal, and spectacular process of cosmic cannibalism in real time. A different kind of terror exists in the cosmic gallery, a nightmare born not of overwhelming energy, but of its perfect and absolute consumption. Beyond the realms of physical violence lies a more profound psychological horror. It is the dread of the void, the fear of an entity that consumes all information and offers nothing in return. We now journey to a world that has perfected this art of nothingness. A planet so impossibly dark it forced astronomers to question the very nature of light and reflection. This is not the passive darkness of an orphan planet lost in the void. This is an active, hungry darkness, the darkness of a world that is being force-fed the light of its own sun and has become a literal black hole in planetary form. The planet designated Tres 2b was discovered by the Kepler Space Telescope, an observatory designed to detect the subtle dimming of a star's light as a planet transits in front of it. But Kepler could also detect the opposite, a secondary eclipse, the moment a planet passes behind its star. In that instant, the total light from the system should dip by the tiny amount the planet itself was reflecting. It is a measurement of a world's shine. When astronomers pointed Kepler at Tres 2b and waited for this moment, they were met with an almost perfect silence in their data. The dip in light was so minuscule, so statistically close to zero, that it bordered on the unbelievable. The initial data suggested they were looking at a celestial object that was reflecting almost no light at all, a world darker than the blackest soot, a planet that had somehow erased its own reflection from the universe. This profound blackness is not due to a lack of light. TREPS-2b is a hot Jupiter orbiting its star at a blistering proximity, completing a full year in less than 3 Earth days. It is perpetually bathed in a torrent of stellar radiation, a searing bath of energy that heats its atmosphere to nearly 1,000 degrees Celsius. The planet should be bright, but it is not. The cause of its impossible darkness lies in a unique and terrifying atmospheric chemistry. Scientists theorize its upper atmosphere is a thick, heavy, high-altitude haze, free of the reflective clouds of ammonia or water that adorn other gas giants. Instead, it is laden with a cocktail of light-absorbing chemical compounds, including vaporized sodium, vaporized potassium, and gaseous titanium oxide. These elements, in the planet's extreme heat, do not form clouds that reflect. They form a vast invisible sponge that traps the incoming photons with near-perfect efficiency, converting their energy not into reflected light, but into raw, searing heat. To approach this world would be to witness a paradox of perception. From a distance, you would not see a planet at all. You would see a hole in space, a perfectly circular, impossibly sharp-edged patch of the star field that has been deleted from existence. It would be a featureless, three-dimensional void, a sphere of pure nothingness, where a planet ought to be, its presence defined only by the distant stars it is blocking from view. As you drew closer, the horror would deepen. The world is not completely invisible, because it is so incredibly hot from all the light it absorbs. It emits its own faint thermal radiation. It glows. But it is not a glow of light, it is a glow of pure heat. A dull, menacing, deep, blood-red aura, like a colossal sphere of charcoal, heated to incandescence in a cosmic furnace. It is a darkness made visible, a smoldering, angry ember hanging in the void, offering no illumination, only a profound sense of menace. The existential dread of a world like TREPS-2b is rooted in its defiance of our most fundamental expectations. We expect planets to be places, to have features, weather, colors. TREPS-2b has none. It is a sensory deprivation tank the size of a world. It is the physical embodiment of our primal fear of the dark, of the unknown, of a featureless abyss where no information can be gleaned. It is a place where you would be simultaneously blind and burning, unable to see a thing, yet being cooked alive by the immense radiant heat of the very air around you. It represents a different kind of cosmic finality, a world that is not being violently destroyed, but is instead a perfect and eternal energy sink, a cosmic glutton that consumes all the light from its star and reflects nothing back, a quiet and terrifying preview of the universe's own eventual heat death. The horror of TREPS-2b is a passive one, a world that simply is a void, an eternal monument to blackness. But the cosmos is rarely static. Its terrors are often dynamic, violent, and unfolding. While this dark world absorbs its fate in silence, another planet not far away in the cosmic scheme is screaming. It is a world caught in the very active, violent, and spectacular process of being torn apart. Its own atmosphere being bled into space by a star that is feeding on it. Its story reveals a more immediate and brutal form of planetary death, and it is to this doomed world, this place of cosmic cannibalism, that we must now journey. A common thread connects the nightmares we have witnessed so far. They are states of being, conditions of a horrifying but largely stable equilibrium. The inferno of Corot 7b burns with a constant heat. The orphan planet PSO J318.5-22 wanders through an eternal, unchanging night. The dark world of TREPS-2b consumes light with a timeless, passive hunger. These are portraits of a completed hell, But the universe is not only a gallery of static horrors, it is also a theater of active, ongoing destruction. There is a profound difference between a world that is a corpse and a world that is in the very act of being murdered. The cosmos has offered us a ringside seat to witness such a death in progress. We now journey to a doomed world, a planet being actively dismembered and consumed by its own star, a place that allows us to watch the spectacular and brutal process of cosmic cannibalism as it unfolds. The victim in this celestial crime is the planet WASP-12b, a gas giant some 1400 light-years away in the constellation Auriga. It belongs to a class of planets known as puffy hot Jupiters, worlds that have been so superheated by their parent stars that their atmospheres have swelled to immense and unstable proportions. WASP-12b is a behemoth, nearly twice the physical size of our own Jupiter, yet it possesses only about 40% more mass, giving it a strangely low density, like a planetary ghost. Its fate was sealed by its location. It orbits its sun-like star at a distance of just over 3 million kilometers, completing a full year in a mere 26 hours. It is so close that the gravitational forces it endures are almost beyond our ability to model, and it is this proximity that is the engine of its slow and spectacular execution. The planet is also unusually dark, not because of exotic light-eating chemicals, but because it is incredibly rich in carbon, an element that tends to form dark, sooty compounds in its searingly hot atmosphere, absorbing light and contributing to its own torment. The first stage of this planet's execution is a form of gravitational torture. The immense pull of its nearby star does not act uniformly on the planet. It pulls much more strongly on the side of the planet facing the star than it does on the far side. This differential force, an extreme version of the tidal forces our moon exerts on Earth's oceans, has relentlessly stretched and deformed WASP-12b's very shape. It is no longer a sphere. It is a titanic, gravitationally distorted egg, its pointed end aimed perpetually at the star that is destroying it. This elongation is not a subtle effect. The planet is being pulled so far out of shape that its own internal pressures and structure are failing. It is a world that is being physically broken on a cosmic rack, its form contorted by the inescapable pull of its executioner. This constant stretching and squeezing also generates immense frictional heat deep within the planet's core, helping to keep it in its puffy, swollen, and vulnerable state, making it even easier for the star to continue its deadly work. This gravitational torture is merely the prelude to the main event, the act of consumption. The star's heat and gravity are so intense that they are actively siphoning off the planet's atmosphere. At the pointed, star-facing end of its egg-shaped body, the planet's own gravity is no longer strong enough to hold onto its own air. A steady, torrential stream of superheated gas, primarily hydrogen but also rich in carbon, is being pulled directly from the planet and is falling into the star. We are witnessing a world literally bleeding its atmosphere into space. This is not a gentle, invisible process. Astronomers using the Hubble Space Telescope have directly observed a colossal, glowing shroud of gas surrounding the planet, and have tracked the accretion stream as it flows from the planet into a swirling incandescent disk around the star itself. It is a river of a stolen world, flowing across millions of kilometers of space. The rate of this cosmic vampirism is staggering. The planet is losing mass at a rate of 6 billion metric tons every single second. It is a testament to the planet's sheer size that it can sustain such a catastrophic hemorrhage at all. The bizarre carbon-rich chemistry of this dying world adds another layer of horror to its story. The immense temperatures and pressures in its atmosphere, combined with the abundance of carbon, create the conditions for some truly exotic geology. Deeper within the atmosphere, It is theoretically possible that the carbon could be compressed into vast layers of graphite, and at even greater depths, into diamonds. The idea of a diamond planet is an alluring one, but the reality on WASP-112b would be a vision of hell. It would be a world where continents of diamond and graphite might float on a metallic hydrogen core, all while the sky above is being violently stripped away into a star. It is a treasure that can never be claimed, a jewel box being melted down in a stellar furnace. The carbon-rich atmosphere also means the air is thick with carbon monoxide and methane, a poisonous, sooty, and superheated smog that perpetually shrouds this tortured, egg-shaped, and diamond-hearted world. There is no hope for WASP-12b. Its fate is sealed. Astronomers calculate that at its current rate of mass loss, the planet has, at most, 10 million years left to live. In cosmic terms, this is the blink of an eye. We are witnessing a planet in its final moments. Its orbit is decaying, and with every 26-hour year, it spirals infinitesimally closer to its doom. The process of its death will only accelerate. As it loses mass, the star's gravitational grip will become even more dominant, pulling it in faster, stripping its atmosphere with even greater ferocity. Eventually, it will cross the final threshold, the Roche limit, at which point the star's gravity will overwhelm the planet's own entirely. It will be completely and utterly disintegrated, its remaining core and any diamond heart it may possess torn apart and smeared into a final, brilliant, glowing ring of debris, which will then rain down into the star in a last, spectacular, suicidal blaze of glory. We are privileged, and perhaps cursed, to have a front row seat to the slow, brutal, and spectacular death of a world. We have now stood in the heart of a planetary inferno, wandered the eternal night of a lost orphan, witnessed the destructive grandeur of a world eater, been assaulted by a storm of glass, and stared into a perfect, light-swallowing void. And now, we have watched a world in the very process of its own agonizing death. The horrors of the cosmos, it seems, are as varied as they are absolute. They can be static conditions of torment, or they can be active, violent processes of annihilation. But so far, all of these terrors have been, in their own way, natural. They are the results of gravity, chemistry, and heat, operating on a grand scale. But what if there exists another class of horrifying worlds? Worlds whose terror comes not from natural processes, but from the unmistakable and chilling signature of artificiality. What nightmares await us if we find a world that is not just dead, but has been murdered by intelligence? Our journey now takes its most speculative and most chilling turn yet. The death of WASP-12b is a spectacle of natural, albeit brutal, physics. It is the predictable outcome of gravity and heat, a story written in the fundamental language of the cosmos. All the terrors we have witnessed on our journey so far, from the rain of stone to the shroud of darkness, have been the work of an indifferent and mindless universe, the random and terrifying results of its unthinking laws. But what if a world, or more accurately a star system, could be found that defied natural explanation? What if we stumbled upon a place whose features were so strange, so improbable, that they hinted not at the blind work of nature, but at the deliberate and chilling hand of artifice? The final and most profound horror may not be a world murdered by its star, but a world that has been deliberately hidden, or a place that is not a world at all, but a machine. We now move beyond the realm of natural nightmares, into the threshold of a terror that may have been engineered. Our destination is a star, outwardly unremarkable, a pale yellow dwarf in the constellation of Cygnus, nearly 1,500 light-years from Earth. It is officially known as KIC 8462852, but it has become infamous by another name, Tabby's star. The Kepler Space Telescope stared at this star, along with 150,000 others for 4 straight years, looking for the tiny regular dips in light that signify a transiting planet. For most stars, the story was simple, but the light curve from Tabby's star was a portrait of pure, unadulterated chaos. It showed not the gentle, periodic dimming of a planet, but a series of bizarre, profoundly deep, and completely aperiodic eclipses. Sometimes the star's light would dip by a staggering 22%, an amount that would require an object 1,000 times the size of Earth to block it. These dimming events were not brief. They would last for days, sometimes weeks at a time, and they followed no discernible pattern. It was a signal unlike anything ever seen before. A star that seemed to be flickering, sputtering, and at times almost going out. The scientific community was thrown into a state of profound confusion. Every known natural explanation was proposed, and every single one was found wanting. Perhaps it was a vast swarm of comets, a great celestial traffic jam, passing in front of the star, but a swarm large enough to block that much light would produce an immense amount of infrared heat from the dust, and our telescopes saw none. Perhaps it was a catastrophic planetary collision, a recent shattering of two worlds that left a vast orbiting cloud of debris. But again, such a cataclysm would be a hot, messy event, and the debris cloud should glow brightly in the infrared spectrum. The system was cold. Perhaps the star itself was just intrinsically variable, a strange, sputtering star, but detailed analysis showed the star was a stable, mature F-type star, with no reason to be behaving so erratically. One by one, every natural explanation was shown to be either physically impossible or statistically so improbable as to be effectively impossible. The data was a perfect mystery, a celestial crime scene with no weapon, no motive, and no natural suspect. It was in this vacuum of natural explanations that the astronomer Jason Wright and his colleagues proposed an explanation that was both perfectly logical and deeply terrifying. They suggested that the bizarre dimming of Tabby's star could be explained if the star was surrounded by an alien megastructure, specifically a Dyson swarm, a vast orbiting collection of artificial habitats and solar collectors built by a hyper-advanced Type 2 civilization to capture the energy of their parent star. The strange aperiodic dimming was caused by these colossal, city-sized structures, along with their own construction debris, passing in front of the star as they orbited. This was not a message. It was not a beacon. It was simply the evidence of a civilization so far beyond our own that its industrial activity is visible across 1,000 light-years of space. We were not seeing a planet. We were seeing a construction site, or perhaps a tomb. The existential dread of this possibility is almost impossible to overstate. It is the horror of the truly alien, the terror of finding an artifact so vast and so incomprehensible that it dwarfs all of human history and ambition. The silence from the star is the most terrifying part of the mystery. The SETI Institute has pointed its most sensitive radio telescopes at this star, listening for any hint of a deliberate signal, any stray communication, any evidence of the intelligence that might have built such a structure. They have found nothing, only a profound and unsettling silence. This leaves us with a gallery of horrifying possibilities. Are we witnessing a civilization in the process of building its great work? A civilization so advanced it has no need for primitive radio communication? Or are we seeing the derelict, silent ruin of a civilization that died millions of years ago, its great work now a ghost, a celestial tombstone, orbiting the dead star of its creators? Or is it something else entirely? A weapon? A prison? The very nature of the mystery is that we cannot know. We are like ants, staring up at the foundations of a skyscraper being built by an invisible and silent God with no way to comprehend its purpose or its nature. The horror of Tabby's star is the horror of our own cosmic insignificance. The mystery of this strange flickering star remains unsolved, a chilling Rorschach test for our deepest cosmic anxieties. It represents the ultimate horror, the hint of an intelligence so vast and so alien that its very existence is a form of terror. We have journeyed through the hells of nature, from fire and ice to destruction and deception, and now we stand at the threshold of a potential nightmare of artifice. What then can we conclude from this grand and terrible tour? What is the final lesson these horrifying worlds, both natural and perhaps unnatural, teach us about the universe? And more importantly, about ourselves and our own fragile, precious place within it. The final leg of our journey must be one of reflection, a look back at the gallery of nightmares to find its ultimate unifying meaning. Our long and harrowing journey through the darkest corners of the cosmos now nears its end. We have stood on the shores of lava oceans, wandered the eternal night of a lost world, witnessed the destructive grandeur of a world eater, been assaulted by a storm of glass, stared into a perfect, light-swallowing void, and watched a planet in the very act of its own agonizing death. We have even peered into the unsettling silence of a star that may harbor an intelligence so vast it appears to us as a glitch in the natural order. We have returned from this grand tour of cosmic nightmares with a new and chilling perspective. The final and most terrifying lesson these worlds teach us is not that the universe contains monsters. It is that the monsters are the norm, and our own gentle, tranquil world is the almost impossible exception. We search for habitable planets, for Earth-like worlds, as if they are a common and expected outcome of cosmic evolution. But this gallery of horrors suggests the opposite is true. The universe is not in the business of creating sanctuaries. It is in the business of creating planets. And the default state of a planet, it seems, is a state of hell. The great filter that we fear may prevent the rise of intelligent life may be a far more fundamental and brutal one. The universe itself may filter out almost all worlds from achieving even the most basic state of habitability. Our Earth is not a typical product, it is a statistical miracle, a fragile anomaly, a winning lottery ticket in a cosmic game of chance so vast and so skewed toward failure that we should not, by all rights, even exist. This realization forces us to recalibrate our most fundamental emotions about the cosmos. We look at the breathtaking images from our great telescopes, the swirling iridescent clouds of a nebula where stars are being born, or the majestic pinwheeling arms of a distant galaxy, and we feel a sense of awe and sublime beauty. But this tour has taught us that this beauty is not the gentle beauty of a painting. It is the terrifying beauty of a volcano in full eruption, of a colossal tidal wave, of a raging inferno. The awe and the terror are not separate emotions. They are two sides of the very same coin. The same gravitational forces that sculpt spiral galaxies also tear planets apart. The same nuclear fusion that lights up the heavens also scorches worlds to cinders. To truly appreciate the universe is to embrace this profound and terrifying duality. To see only the beauty is to remain a naive child, unaware of the violence of nature. To see only the horror is to become a cynic, blind to the magnificent and majestic scale of it all. The worlds we have visited are monstrous. They are visions of damnation, but they are also magnificent in their extremity. They are a testament to the power of physics to create states of matter and energy, so far beyond our own experience, that they command a kind of terrible, dark respect. And yet, for all their sound and fury, for all their spectacular violence, these worlds convey one final, chilling, and universal truth: the truth of cosmic indifference. The rock that rains on Chord 7b falls for no one. The eternal darkness of the rogue planet is witnessed by nothing. The magnificent shattered rings of J1407b are a memorial with no one to mourn. These are worlds of eternal storms, of endless nights, and of agonizing deaths, all taking place for no reason, for no purpose, and for no audience. They are simply the inevitable, mindless, and mechanical outcomes of the laws of physics, playing out on a grand planetary scale. The ultimate horror of these worlds is not that they are hells, it is that they are meaningless hells. Their existence serves no purpose, teaches no lesson, and fulfills no destiny. They are monuments to the universe's profound and utter indifference to the concepts of suffering or salvation. They simply are, and in their silent, eternal torment, they reflect back to us the cold, hard, and terrifying truth of the cosmos itself. This grand and terrible lesson about the nature of the universe inevitably forces us to turn our gaze back upon ourselves, to return from our tour of cosmic nightmares and look again at the world we call home. We have all seen the famous photograph, the pale blue dot. Our Earth as a tiny single pixel of light hanging in the vastness of space. Before this journey, that image might have evoked a sense of loneliness or smallness. But after the worlds we have witnessed, that same image is transformed. It is no longer a portrait of loneliness. It is a portrait of an impossible, almost unbelievable sanctuary. It is the image of a fragile bubble of perfect tranquility, floating against all odds in the midst of a violent, chaotic, and terrifying ocean. Every single feature of our world that we take for granted is revealed to be a nearly impossible stroke of cosmic luck. Our stable, near-circular orbit, our protective, magnetic field that shields us from the solar wind, our transparent atmosphere that provides air but does not trap us in a runaway greenhouse. Our moon, just the right size and distance to stabilize our axial tilt and give us predictable seasons, and most of all, the vast, placid, life-giving oceans of liquid water. These are not common features of the universe. They are the rarest and most precious treasures the cosmos can produce. This new perspective must also reframe our own terrestrial fears. We fear the storm, but the universe has shown us a world where the wind moves at 7 times the speed of sound, and the rain is made of molten glass. We fear the darkness, but the universe has shown us a world of unending, absolute night, where the sun is not even a memory. We fear the heat of our deserts and the cold of our poles, but the universe has shown us worlds that are literally oceans of lava, and worlds so cold that the very air we breathe would freeze into a solid rock. Our deepest earthly fears are but pale, gentle shadows, tiny provincial imitations of the true and absolute forms of these phenomena that exist in abundance throughout the cosmos. This realization is profoundly humbling, but it is not meant to diminish our own struggles. Instead, it should serve to highlight the astonishing peace and safety of our planetary cradle. We are a species that evolved not in a cosmic war zone, but in a celestial garden, a place of such profound and unlikely calm that it allowed for the slow, delicate, and fragile process of life to unfold over billions of years. And yet this is where we must end our journey, not on a note of perfect comfort, but with one final, unsettling, and necessary thought. This sanctuary, this impossible garden, is not a permanent gift. It is a temporary reprieve. The universe is not static, and the gallery of nightmares is always accepting new exhibits. The same indifferent laws of physics that created the horrors we have witnessed are still at play, here in our own solar system. Our sun will one day exhaust its fuel, swell into a red giant, and boil our oceans, scorching the earth into a cinder not unlike the worlds of fire we have seen. There are rogue asteroids and comets, remnants of our own system's chaotic birth, that still cross our path, any one of which could trigger a cataclysm that would reset the course of life on this planet in an instant. The profound and terrifying beauty of the cosmos, is matched only by its profound and terrifying patience. The lesson of the horrifying worlds is not that we are uniquely safe, it is that we are uniquely and temporarily lucky. The final horror is the quiet, creeping realization that our paradise is not a fortress. It is a fragile, beautiful, and temporary exception, and the indifferent universe has all the time in the world,